All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Armchair Armdrager podcast. As always, I am your host, Ben Hersick. Now, this week I'm doing something a little different. I'm recording this on Friday. It's like almost 9 o'clock in the morning right now. I was kind of waiting to see if there was any more news coming out of Japan with wrestling. Surprising, there's wrestling news in Japan. Uh, but as of right now, I believe it is I believe it's Saturday over there. So I guess the news for Friday would be over. So there's that. There's a lot to go through, and also I'm gonna try and keep this as short as possible because it's midterm week. I have three papers to finish, one to finish, two to start. I have one who have to figure out how to fix the final sentence to make it sound right. I have three articles to write for newspapers. I'm I'm gonna try and make this as short as possible. I'm hoping to keep it under an hour, but we'll see how it goes. And as first, as always, how these episodes usually start off, the Twitter mentions. You can follow myself on Twitter at ChurroSolider. You can follow this podcast, that podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat, which is a website that I write for that covers professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA over at Things Combat. We also have a merch store where you can buy shirts, hoodies, hats, a bunch of other stuff. Bags are there now. We got water bottles. We got what else do we have? Mouse pads, phone cases, and probably a couple other things that I'm forgetting. Christmas time is coming up. We've discussed adding a couple of Christmassy themed things, somewhat. We'll see where that goes. Very excited to see if we do, because not gonna lie, I will get one if we do. What else do I have? Oh, right. I am the sports editor over at The Cauldron at Cleveland State University, where I write about sports and one time arts and entertainment. I think I did an opinion piece at some point too. Oh, yeah, I did an opinion piece about WWE in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that was fun. So if you want to follow us over there on Twitter, it is at CSU Cauldron. We have layout next week. If my editor in chief is listening to this, I don't have my article written yet. Sorry, Courtney. But that's all that. Follow me all over there. I'll have links to Twitter pages below. I might have other links to articles and whatnot below. My draft predictions will be in the links below. Also, I forgot to mention. Uh, it's been a busy week in pro wrestling. To be fair, we finished the WWE Draft from the time I recorded last week. The first set of picks were done the day the episode came out, and the second set of picks was done on Monday. So I can go through everything on there. We've had some injuries in the Wednesday Night Wars, which is the first time we can report about this, really, since it's only like 3 weeks young. NXT possibly with more of the global localization and a big buyout in pro wrestling, which I will get to in a minute. I'm keeping these a little vague because those last two are the two that I'm really going to touch the most on. It depends on how much I go into detail in the draft. So that being said, let's start with the draft. Also, I have my notes backwards, so I have what I want to finish with first, written down first, and I have what I want to talk about first, written down last, which is fantastic. Okay, so the draft. The draft overall was pretty good. I enjoyed the wrestling aspects of it, where you got to see matches and whatnot. Most of the matches were pretty good. I was upset with how they did the first picks overall, because it's obvious who you're not going to have lose. Charlotte can take a loss easily. Becky's a champion. If Becky beats Charlotte, we get Becky versus Charlotte for the 18,000th time. And I don't think anybody really wants that. Roman and Seth, you figured the Fiend would be involved, and yada yada, blah blah blah. So all that was kind of weird to me, but I was kind of happy. I was kind of fine with it because you could see it coming. And now I figured they're gonna do a draft every year, but what I want them to do is go back to the old style. Have it be a SmackDown superstar versus a Raw superstar. Winning brand gets a pick. I would like that a lot. That was one of my favorite things about the draft then. You really couldn't figure out what would happen. Like, you could say, like, oh, I think this person's going to go here, this person's going to go there. But it's how do you get them there? You have to have somebody win a match to get that pick, which I think would be very interesting. Don't put the whole rosters back into a pool and redraft everything. Just make it simple. Say champions are excluded because you don't want the SmackDown Women's Champion over on Raw. Except for maybe the mid-card. I could see the mid-card title switching shows. Like Intercontinental could be on Raw, US could be on SmackDown, or so on and so forth. But what was very interesting with what's it call it? With the draft, there were some nice picks I saw. Obviously now, like people have mentioned, they're keeping couples, real life couples together. So as soon as Charlotte was picked for Raw, you figured, well, Andrade is going to Raw. I'm sorry, Andrade. I always try and say that right. And most of the time I do pretty well. And Andrade went with Zelina Vega. So you figured, okay, Aleister Black's going to Raw. And then they also did the blockbuster, in air quotes, blockbuster trade, which was very interesting. It was Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross to SmackDown. Now, Nikki Cross, for those who don't know, is, I believe, now married, either married or engaged still, I don't remember exactly which, to Killian Dane. And with Dane being in NXT, he's only in Florida, which, to be fair, with the light road schedule they seem to have in place now, I think Raw goes from Sunday to Wednesday. So they have Thursday, Friday, Saturday off. I think. In SmackDown, I think it's Thursday to Sunday, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with the house show schedule, really, which is a bad thing, but It's easier for her to be on either show, to be fair. So Nikki's like somebody who could play both sides or work on either show, I think is the best way to say it. But Alexa Bliss going to SmackDown kind of confirms something. For a long time, her and Buddy Murphy were dating, from what I remember. And Murphy's over on Raw now. And they don't want that kind of like maybe there's like tension of like a breakup or anything. They don't want that to be in like the backstage area, so they moved Alexa to SmackDown, which makes total sense. Also, they probably realized that the only babyface women's wrestler on SmackDown at the time was Carmella. Literally everybody else was a heel. Lacey Evans, Sasha Banks, Bayley. I think that was the only women's division at the time. Yeah, that was. Oh no, Tamina. Tamina signed. I'll talk about the free agent stuff here in a minute. I'm very happy to see Murphy and Aleister Black on Raw. I kind of feel like there's something we're going to see happen here. Eventually, Seth is going to send the Fiend packing. I'm not excited for their match at Crown Jewel, to be fair. So AJ Styles is going to drop the U.S. title, I believe, to Aleister Black. I believe they might propel Andrade to the main event scene, and AJ Styles will go with him up to there. And then we can see Black have a nice little run with the title, beating superstars here and there. I don't know exactly who yet because I don't have the roster. Well, the new roster's in front of me. And eventually him and Murphy could be a thing. Because Murphy and Black are reported to be very high with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman really, really likes them. And I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. And I'm very excited to see it because of the fact that we've seen how good Black is. We've seen how good Murphy is. Let's actually use it. And Heyman's seen that and like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. And Heyman has a much better beat than, for example, the now former executive director, Eric Bischoff of SmackDown. I'm curious to see what Bruce Pritchard does because he has the likes of, Ali, Cesaro signed there. He's got a lot of talent in that mid-card pool. And I'm very nervous about the Intercontinental Championship match tonight with Shinsuke and Roman. I don't want Roman to win because I've enjoyed Shinsuke as Intercontinental Champion, but it's Roman Reigns in a title match, and Fox, he is the Fox guy. So it's a tough call. I could see with Seth Rollins now being removed from Team Hogan, I could see there being some sort of disqualification run-in. Baron Corbin's on that show now, so maybe we could see that happen, and then that's how Roman becomes the new team captain of Team Hogan. Shinsuke keeps the title, and we don't have to worry about Shinsuke losing the title yet, because Shinsuke can be money on Fox. I am very excited to see what he can do. Now, I want to talk about... There were like a couple guys I was curious to see where they went. Black, Ali, and Murphy were one of them, or three of them. Cedric Alexander was another one, and he went to Raw. I want them to use Cedric, please. Use him in something. Give him something to do. Don't put him with Titus O'Neil, please. Give him a feud. Give him something to do, something good. Give him a team, maybe. Because the Raw Tag Team division is really good right now. You have Viking Raiders, who are the first ever IWGP, Ring of Honor, NXT, and WWE Tag Team Champions. So they're technically the Tag Team Grand Slam winners. Or technically the first ever Tag Team Grand Slam champions. I really want somebody to make a shirt of that, please. I won't, but somebody could. There's AOP is there now. They just signed yesterday. Who else? Who else? I'm bad with tag teams. Holy shit. I'm gonna pull up the roster page. It's not accurate because it still has certain free agents listed on other shows. Raw. Let's see here. Who do they have? Oh, Street Profits, the OC. They don't have those guys. Of the 4 teams they have, it's a really good division. SmackDown's not bad either. SmackDown has New Day, Revival, Rudolph, although that might be over soon, and Heavy Machinery. There's tag team issues, yes, which is why I'm saying they could put certain stars together. You give Cedric Alexander somebody, and my personal pick would be EC3. Those two together would be really, really fun to see, I think. But it's a big issue that needs to be addressed. Because 4 teams is not a lot. You're going to cycle through and through. And yeah, there are 2 teams that are still undrafted free agents because they weren't technically even in pools. So we'll see what happens there. Who else was I really curious to see? I was surprised by the Lacey Evans pick to SmackDown. I kind of get why. Because I thought about this yesterday. A lot of times when I'm doing live coverage of shows and Lacey Evans shows up, I tweet, "Go away, Lacey Evans," in all caps, because I'm like, it's annoying and I don't like it. She's good in the ring. My thing is the character work. And I know the character is supposed to be that you don't like her or whatnot. And I'm like, it just annoys the hell out of me that I don't enjoy her as much as I could in the ring. If I take away the character aspect, then she's fantastic in the ring. But other than that, very, very solid picks for the most part. There were some that were head scratchers. Titus O'Neil and Lucha House Party. I don't hate any of them. I enjoy Lucha House Party a lot. I think all 3 guys could be really solid mid-card guys, possibly even with a chance to be in the main event scene. I could see, Lince Dorado catching fire or Kalisto. Grand Metalik's a bit of a tougher sell. Kalisto does speak English, and so does Lince Dorado. That's kind of the barrier that's annoying as hell in WWE, but it's there. If you don't speak English, you're kind of behind the 8 ball, and you just have to perform, and you can't really cut promos. You can, but people aren't going to understand you, and you're going to get the annoying-ass what chance, which I heard on NXT with Boa, and I'm like, guys, stop it. You're NXT. You shouldn't do this. It's an interesting thing, too, because, Lucha House Party, I didn't mind them being picked. I'm not happy they went as high as they did. They went in either the 3rd or 4th round. That's a late... Excuse me. I talk about the NFL draft a lot. I talk about drafts in general. I talk about the NFL draft, NBA draft. Not really MLB because there's way too many things to watch with that because they can pick out of high school and whatnot. But Lucha House Party is not worthy of a high pick. They're good, don't get me wrong. They have a former cruiserweight champion in the stable, yes. But they're not, who else was available that day? Cesaro or Drew Gulak. They're not those level guys. They're guys you can get late in a round, in one of the later rounds, and build your team around. The best example of that in professional sports, look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a 7th round pick, the number 199th pick overall. And he is now a 20-plus year veteran. I think this is his 20th year. He's a 20-year vet. He's had one career injury that I can think of, which was his ACL tear, which put him on the sideline. The Patriots still made the playoffs. You build around that. You give him weapons. You give them people to work with. There's a reason Julian Edelman's there. There's a reason Slater's there. Rob Gronkowski was there. That offensive line that's great is that amazing defense is there. Part of it's because Tom Brady takes pay cuts, but that's not the main point here. The main point is you could have taken Lucha House Party late in the round, picked up Cesaro for SmackDown, where he ended up anyway, and everything would have been fine. Titus O'Neil getting a draft pick at all is kind of weird to me, simply because of the fact that what has he done lately? What has he done? He fell at the greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, and that's the last time. No, he was in the Royal Rumble, and they were like, whoa, 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 and he slowly got in the ring. That's all I can remember from Titus O'Neil recently. 24/7 championship stuff, yeah, but that's here 1 minute, gone the next. He hasn't done much. What warrants him getting a pick? Liv Morgan, I'm fine with. Liv Morgan's kind of that. I'm fine with this pick because of the fact that there's something they can do there and there's a character change coming. When do we see it? I don't know. It's starting to kind of make me worried that we're going to see another, like, what was her name? It was when Tennille Dashwood, or then known as Emma. Was it Emelina? It was either Emelina or Evolution. It was Emelina. It had to have been Emelina. It probably wasn't Emelina. I'm just going to say it was. It was that period where she was like going to go on a new character, and then she was like, oh, nope, it's dead. After like 20 weeks of vignettes. And we were all saying like, this is dumb. It's that stuff there. So, but like, why take Lucha House Party and Titus there when you have like, guys like Cesaro, Gulak, Luke Harper was on the board still, Carrillo, Tozawa, Chad Gable. I'm not calling him Shorty Gable. I'm calling him Chad Gable. Bite me. Please don't, because it's a dumb name, and I think everyone's going to keep calling him Chad. You had guys who were really good still on the board. Like I'm saying, Lucha House Party could still have been picked later in the rounds. It's just that you should have thought about, we could get Cesaro or Luke Harper instead of getting Titus O'Neil. And this is nothing against Titus. Titus is a decent wrestler from what I can remember. But it's just that there's other people who could have been better. There was also the free agent signing period in between shows. I think it was... Oh, God. When was it? After the SmackDown draft, it was either the Saturday or Sunday after the show. Either the day after or 2 days after. Where a bunch of names got signed, like Gulak, the B-Team, Tamina, and a couple others went to SmackDown, and a few went to Raw. Cesaro was the only one not picked up that day. I think there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that in a minute, because that's kind of the last point I want to make. And then after Raw, I think it was Wednesday. It was either yesterday or what? It was Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I don't remember which. I really should. Where there was a huge free agent signing period. Harper got picked up by SmackDown. Cesaro went to Raw. Or no, Cesaro went to SmackDown. Mojo Rawley, No Way Jose are just a couple names that went to Raw. Sarah Logan went to Raw, which a lot of people kind of saw coming because of the aforementioned relationship. She is married to Eric of the Viking Raiders. AOP got picked up. And that's how it works in normal drafts. In every professional sports draft, there's a bunch of people picked. In the NFL draft, there's like 255 or 256 picks through 7 rounds through a 3-day period. There's over 300 people in a draft for the NFL. That right there shows that there's going to be a free agent signing period, which makes total sense. And this is how you do it. You have, although I would have liked if it was like a thread of tweets throughout the day, something like that, instead of like, oh, hey, here's who these shows are taking. I would have preferred, like, okay, this person, that person, this person, that person, like maybe 5, 10, maybe even 20 minutes apart. Which I'm totally fine with, and I totally understand. But I look at it, it was the right move, and I enjoyed it. There were some names that I was kind of surprised actually got picked up. Because I figured if you weren't getting picked up, you might be going to NXT, which leads me to a notable free agent, which I will talk about, like I said, in a minute here. Cesaro was the one I was thinking he could have gone to NXT. But then he went to SmackDown. I think what they were doing was they were waiting to see about word on another current free agent, Sheamus. Sheamus has been out since WrestleMania due to concussion and his early stage spinal stenosis, and them wanting to take every single precaution possible so that Sheamus can still go for as long as he can. I can see the Bar getting back together, and I can see maybe they don't get like a tag team title run, because we're starting to get close to Rumble season and Mania season. I could see them doing an Intercontinental Championship ladder match at WrestleMania. I want that to become a staple. A mid-card ladder match at WrestleMania weekend. You can like swap between US and Intercontinental, just get as many people in there as possible. And Sheamus wins it, and Sheamus is finally the Grand Slam champion. He has one final feud with Cesaro. You break up the Bar and have them go against each other, and Cesaro takes the IC title. Sheamus can retire that way then. And be able to still live happily ever after and be able to walk. It's interesting to see with this free agent period too, because Sarah Logan and Liv Morgan are back on the same show. Drake Maverick is on the opposite show, the 24/7 Championship. He is over on SmackDown, where Truth is on Raw. Who else? EC3 got picked up for Raw. There are some big picks there that were like really nice to see. Like, okay, they're actually gonna do something with these people. There are people I would like to see. I would rather have seen gone back to NXT, like EC3, if they weren't women tag team champions, but they still can show up there. Kairi Sane and Asuka, because I said this on on Twitter with NXT Live Coach. I don't want to see Tegan Nox, Shayna Baszler. I want to see Team Kick, Kabuki Warriors. I would love to see that. Give them 20 minutes. Those four could tell a hell of a story. I'm also just a massive Dakota Kai mark. Fight me. I keep saying fight me, and I'm never meaning it. There was another thing interesting with the draft. So they had two pools. They had a Friday Night SmackDown pool where these 30 people were eligible to be picked during SmackDown. And they had another 40 some odd pool on Raw where these people could be picked during Raw. In those pools, Akira Tozawa, Berta Carrillo, and Chad Gable were in the SmackDown pool. They were picked on Monday Night Raw to go to... Two of them went to Raw, Tozawa and Carrillo, and Gable went to SmackDown. Why were they in the SmackDown pool, in the SmackDown night, in the Friday night pool, if they weren't picked until Monday night? Was there some sort of transitive thing where they would just move over to the Monday night pool if they weren't picked in free agency or drafted on Friday night? They could have explained that, I think. That kind of like confused me. It was a little personal thing where I was like, this doesn't make sense. Also, I know people are going to be talking about, or have been talking about, how the fact that if you went to WWE's website, the names in the pool were the exact order they were being picked in. Rumor is that they were supposed to alphabetize the list, but somebody messed up somewhere. So somebody probably got fired for it. So sorry for whoever got fired. There are still notable free agents available. The big names that I at least wrote down, all these people are either former champions in WWE or a personal favorite of mine, and you'll probably figure out who it is. Matt Hardy, Ruby Riott, Sheamus, the Usos, Nia Jax, Ember Moon, Mickie James, and Naomi. There's still a couple more. Ascension are in there. The Colognes. They're actually everybody I just named except for Ruby Riott is a champion in WWE. It's a shame because Ruby Riott can be. She is that good. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with these ones because they're like not picked. They're not anyway. They don't have a home. So where do they go? What do they do? How do they build this up? Matt, I kind of said this to a coworker kind of jokingly, but I also think it could work. Matt Hardy in NXT. Think about it. Lighter schedule. Can see his family more often. Especially now that they have a third kid on the way. I think it's a third boy, too. Maxwell and the other one, who wasn't in House Hardy during that phase. I'm blanking on his name. I want to say it's Wolfgang, but it's not. It's not Wolfgang. He has two kids right now. He's got a third on the way. It would be a lighter schedule. It would be something he can manage to do also. I would like to see Ruby Riott back in NXT too, to be fair, because of the fact that she's so talented but has nothing to do on the main roster. I don't want to see the Riot Squad reformed because that kind of kills the purpose of Liv Morgan having a new character. So you can either put Ruby in NXT, move Ruby to SmackDown, kind of keep that stuff separate. You have Sarah Logan with a new gimmick, which is reported. Liv Morgan has a new gimmick, again reported possibly. And Ruby Riott has her gimmick, whatever that is. And you have them all go their separate ways, and maybe somewhere down the road, maybe in the Women's Royal Rumble this year or even next year, there's like a little Riot Squad reunion where all three of them are face-to-face in the ring. That's if Ruby Riott's medically cleared still. She had double shoulder surgery, and according to Google Math, I Googled the recovery time from her specific surgery, 6 to 9 months. She can either be cleared right now, or she isn't going to be cleared until January, which means she could be in the Royal Rumble. We will have to wait and see on that. Sheamus already went through a thing with him. Usos, I said in my draft prediction article, they need to be on SmackDown. They are a SmackDown team through and through. Raw just hasn't worked. Hit the soft reset button, send them to SmackDown, and give them that feud there. Give us a proper Usos revival feud, please. Nia Jax probably to SmackDown to be with Tamina to keep the women's tag team division alive. There, actually, the women's tag team division is kind of solely on SmackDown outside of Kabuki. No, Kabuki Warriors and Iconics are on the same show. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville are on SmackDown. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss are on SmackDown. Tamina's on SmackDown currently. Nia Jax, when she returns, should go to SmackDown then to be with Tamina. Or she could go on Raw and be a single star, because there's really nobody to challenge Becky Lynch on that show, to be fair. Becky's going to be champion for a long time. Ember Moon, reports are she has either an Achilles or an ankle injury that is going to keep her out for a while. With the timetable I heard, it's probably Achilles tendon, which is a damn shame because she's so talented. She just doesn't have a character. Really. Her character is pretty much a nerd, but I'm good at wrestling. That's the best way to describe it right now. She's a former NXT Women's Champion. I could see her going back to NXT, to be fair, which I would be totally fine with. Mickie James is currently injured also, her ACL. She's currently commentating on Main Event with Byron Saxton, and I think Vic Joseph is there still. Not sure. But yeah, those are the big ones. Naomi's a big one too because she's a former 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion. She's currently dealing with some personal issues, family related, I believe. So hopefully everything there is getting better, which will be very nice to see. I'm bad at words when it comes to like family things. Also with, I think it was Jimmy, whichever one she's married. I think she's married to Jimmy. With the one Uso having a DUI. We haven't seen them on TV since, aside from taking the loss in the tag team triple threat with the OC and Revival. So we'll see how these free agents shake out. Very curious to see if anyone goes back to NXT. Of the free agents that are still available that I could see going to NXT, Matt Hardy and Ruby Riott are really good shouts. Ember Moon, when she's healthy, to even bolster that women's division, because probably after WrestleMania weekend, they're going to lose Shayna Baszler. And Shayna's probably going to SmackDown, which I both like and don't like. I would like to see her on Raw, personally. Simply because that way there's at least a foreseeable challenger for Becky. But they would still have, the likes of Candice LeRae, Mia Yim, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Io Shirai, and maybe Io goes up too. NXT's women's division is going to look weird in a year here, because there's going to be no more Shayna. It's going to be interesting. There's also the fact that, who else is still there? The Ascension. I could see the Ascension easily going back to NXT. Because outside of Breezango, Forgotten Sons, and Lorcan and Birch, there's no real challengers for Undisputed Era. Why not the Ascension? Have them show up on NXT next week, give them a few months, and have them challenge Undisputed Era at WrestleMania weekend. Which is probably when Undisputed Era is getting the call up. I believe, at least. I could also see them still kicking out Roddy, which is a shame. But with Leon Dijakovic on his neck for that NXT North American Championship, it'll be very interesting to watch. So that's the draft. I talked about that for way too long. That's going to be the main topic of this one, it seems. There's also the first injuries of the Wednesday Night Wars. If you watched NXT last week, one of the first segments, you'll see after Ciampa beats Angel Garza, the Undisputed Era surrounds the ring, and Kyle O'Reilly gave Mauro Ranallo a USB and said, "You're going to want to see this." They played the video after a commercial break. It was Undisputed Era having beat down Velveteen Dream. The reason for that is Dream is injured. We weren't told what. We don't know what it is, so there's no real timetable for a return, but it is severe enough for him to not be able to wrestle next week for the North American Championship, which is why we're now getting the triple threat of Roderick Strong defending against Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic. That's the one match of the whole week next week that I honestly remember. And that's also the match where I can't figure out who's really going to win. I could see Roddy pulling out something at the very end, which might be what happens. I don't want to see Dream be the one to take the title off of Roddy, but I could easily see that happening. I'd rather it would be Lee or Dijakovic. Somebody in there who's like really good. Swerve would be a nice shout. Jordan Miles is a nice shout. Cameron Grimes is even a nice shout. Killian Dane. But it's like, there's so many potential ways they can go in NXT, which is very interesting. And when you sit back and think about it, it makes sense. With WWE, you can be like, oh, hey, here's Bayley Charlotte. And you're like, well, Charlotte's probably going to win. They pulled a swerve last week with Bayley winning, which was nice. But 9 times out of 10, Charlotte's going to win that match. But yeah, Velveteen Dream, undisclosed injury, so no timetable for return. And Luchasaurus, if you were watching AEW, he suffered a hamstring injury just before. It was actually in warm-ups, from what I read, for him and Jungle Boy's Tag Team Championship Tournament match, which is the reason Marco Stunt came in. Marco Stunt was a last-minute replacement. It helps that they're kind of a stable, for lack of a better term, and they could okay, yeah, Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy go. And I have written down here, what do they do with Jungle Boy? Well, maybe him and Marco Stunt are kind of like a jobber tag team. Maybe they're who Angelico and Jack Evans going to win against. Unless Angelico and Jack Evans won on AEW Dark. That's the thing. I need to get better at watching wrestling on YouTube. Problem is, it's long. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. There's NWA Power that I want to watch. There's AEW Dark that I want to watch. That's really it on wrestling YouTube. But yeah, those are the first big injuries. Luchasaurus injured his hamstring and could be out for months, depending on how severe I believe he tore his hamstring. Depends on how severe the tear is. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Two kind of big losses. Luchasaurus, you're kind of curious as to what they do with him because there's no real mid-card in AEW right now. I say there's no mid-card because of the fact there's no mid-card title. And they could easily get a mid-card title and fix all that, which I'm like, okay, fine. You guys got a mid-card now. Good for you. But we'll still have to wait and see on that. There's also the news of Bischoff being fired that I kind of wanted to touch on really quick. With him being fired, and looking into the reasons why, you understand that completely. He was out of touch. He didn't know anything. Heyman came into the job. Maybe it's because he was on the road with them still. Maybe it's because he kind of knew the product since he was always on the road. He kind of knew what was going on and what he wanted to do. And to be fair, Raw has been watchable these past few weeks. I'm not going to say great. It's been watchable, though. The backstage stuff I can deal without, all the okay promos. The Street Profits are the best promo in the business right now. There's the Lana Lashley storyline, which I'm totally not into. There's all this stuff where I'm like, eh. Whereas with the in-ring action is really good. So it's like that aspect I'm fine with, but also you look at the out-of-ring aspect. It's like, take the in-ring aspect, continue to improve that, and work a lot on the out-of-ring aspect. That would be nice, and that's what I want to see from Raw. SmackDown, it's a weird thing. It's a weird deal. SmackDown has the talent. They have everything there. It's just Bischoff didn't know what to do from what I've read and what I've heard. I don't know how true that is. We might not know how true that is until his StarCast appearance here in a couple weeks. But we'll see. It's very interesting to see what he's going to say and what he's going to want to talk about with that. There's always the potential for a soundbite coming from that everyone's going to take up proportion and Bischoff has to clear it up later. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, I'll obviously be talking about it. And Bruce Pritchard coming in, I think, is actually a good call because Pritchard apparently knows the product really well, which would be very helpful for SmackDown because their rating drop last week was kind of surprising, but also not. If they can keep up the number they posted last week, which was like 2.9 million compared to the 3.9 they pulled week one, if they can keep a 2.9 million, that would be very fine with everybody, and everybody would be happy with that. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, AEW is beating NXT in the Wednesday Night Wars, not Monday Night. Monday Night happened 30 years ago. It actually almost did happen 30 years ago, I think, math-wise. It's the reason AEW is only getting 1 million, where SmackDown's getting 2, and Raw's getting 2, and getting high ones at the lowest, The reason for that is because AEW is still kind of like a cult thing. Same with NXT, where it's like it's a cult. These are guys that hardcore wrestling fans know. There's a reason guys like me see all these signings and they're like, great signing, great pickup. And they can be great. Like, look at NXT getting Austin Theory, getting some of the cruiserweights. Leo Rush is down there now. You know, you have all these like guys that are signing with other places, and I'm like, this is cool. Shotzi Blackheart just signed with NXT, and I think that's a great pickup for them. She could be a future NXT Women's Champion, to be fair. She has a different look. She has something different about her. It's kind of like that X Factor she kind of has, from what I've seen. There's like that little air of like, she does something different that works. And I'm curious to see how it translates to WWE. NXT in particular. And with SmackDown going from 3 to 2, Vince might have seen that as like a big drop, and Bischoff might be out because of that, from a rumor I read. It could be something else. We'll have to wait till StarCast, like I said, to maybe know the exact reason. And then still, we might only get one side of the story, and WWE might be like, yep, nope, that's just what happened. But that's that. NXT's global localization is still a thing going on that they want to make happen. There are rumors of, NXT Canada and NXT Mexico. It seems like the next one we're getting is NXT Japan. That's the reason I kind of wanted to wait to record this. The simple fact that if NXT Japan happens, I want to have like news of it right away. It hasn't happened yet, and there are reasons behind it, but they're really pushing. They're seeming to make a little bit of headway. So here's all the news we know. NXT Japan failed to buy Pro Wrestling Noah, along with another company, which will be the final topic I talk about today. The Japanese PC Performance Center, it might have some head trainers already. There's still companies that could work with NXT Japan. And a lot of people are saying it's not going to work. I'm going to explain why it can work, but WWE needs to work with its competitors. First, let's talk about the failing to buy Pro Wrestling Noah. It was reported that WWE attempted to buy Pro Wrestling Noah. For those that don't know, Pro Wrestling Noah is the home of, I guess, somewhat lesser known Japanese performers, compared to New Japan at least. But also, this is the place that made Kenta, or in WWE as he was known, Hideo Itami, the big star that he was when NXT signed him. Now, I don't know how NXT UK necessarily works, because they use the likes of people from Progress. They use, I think OTT is involved somehow, some way, at least with Jordan Devlin, and any other Irish, Northern Ireland, maybe, wrestlers. They work with ICW. I know WXW is now involved. And I think A-Kid might have signed. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a name change, because saying, oh, you have a match with A-Kid coming up, everyone's going to be like, that's funny. Knowing WWE fan bases. It's a name change I wouldn't mind, because, to be fair, it's not a bad name, but it could be better. A-Kid's a great wrestler, too, don't get me wrong. I enjoy watching him perform. I just could see possibly a name change coming. I don't know if they necessarily own those companies. I know Jim Smallman is leaving Progress December 30th after their 100th show, and is going to be with NXT UK full-time. Or is going to be more of his focus, at least, from what he said on Twitter. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know the whole deal with that, too. It's like, I don't know why he's going to do that. Maybe Hunter's getting ready, because the XFL is supposedly starting in February, I think. The Extreme Football League will be starting then, and Vince reportedly is going to have a lot of his focus there. So maybe that's why. Maybe Hunter then takes over the main roster, and Smallman needs to run NXT. And Triple H has faith in, Matt Bloom and Shawn Michaels and all of them to be able to run NXT while he focuses on the main roster. I don't know. That's just speculation from my end. What I am curious about, too, though, with NXT UK and the ownership of companies and why WWE tried to buy Noah. I don't know how much of a hand WWE has in Progress and ICW. I know the Progress World Champion now is Eddie Dennis. It was surprising because at Chapter 90, whatever the hell, it was one of the recent chapters. where Eddie Dennis cashed in the contract against Walter and David Starr to make their Progress Championship match a triple threat. You kind of figured that this would be the head of the David Starr Walter story, with Walter being in NXT now, and David Starr being a hardcore independent wrestler. His whole thing is a whole brand called Independent. I know, like, Session Moth Martina was a part of it before she signed with Ring of Honor. Who was it? Ridgeway? I think Chris Ridgeway is apparently in it. Chris Brooks is in there. I think Lycos is even involved. Kid Lycos, for those that don't know. It'll be interesting because we all felt like that would be the head of the Walter David Starr story. And I kind of feel like it's a WWE Money in the Bank cash-in kind of thing where you can see it happening in WWE. I haven't heard much from ICW, and I haven't heard much from WXW, partly because, it's Scotland and Germany, and I'm only one guy that can watch so much pro wrestling. I have, like I said, 4 papers that I have to have finished by Sunday, plus 3 articles I have to write still. I can only do so much, guys. But I haven't heard much from them simply because of the fact that I'm not a frequent on their Twitter. I want to be, but I think the WXW Twitter's in German too. So I'd have to click on every one of their tweets and translate it to understand what's happening. And Twitter Translate is not maybe the best tool. I also don't know how good Google Translate is, to be fair. So who knows? But with WWE failing to buy Noah, that made me wonder simply do they own the other working relationships that they have? Is that how these working relationships work? Does New Japan own Ring of Honor and CMLL? Does AEW own AAA and OWE now? I don't know. It was reportedly that they wanted to use that group of pro wrestlers for their set, or for NXT Japan. Totally understandable, but Noah said no, and fair play to him. From what I read, it was partly because of the fact how Japanese businesses don't like to sell to outside investors, which makes sense to me from a business standpoint, as much as I know about business. And it does raise a question where they can still work with, and I'll get into that in a second. But they do seem to be going ahead with the Japanese Performance Center, which I totally understand. To be fair, I think there should be more performance centers around the world. You had the likes of, the New Japan Dojo, Ring of Honor had a dojo for a while. They still might. There's the New Japan U.S. dojo in California. There's performance centers in the U.S. and in the U.K. I'd like to see performance centers a little more around the world. A European one, maybe. A Japanese one, I wouldn't mind. Canada would be a nice one. Mexico would be a nice one. Where it's not necessarily for NXTs, but just to help develop pro wrestlers, essentially. Because you can get some fantastic training done there. You can get some amazing stuff. But the Japanese one seems to be full speed ahead. I'm bad at phrases. Yeah, it's full speed ahead. There we go. That's what I want to say. It seems to be full speed ahead with already having some of the head trainers. There's one name I know how to say on this list that I wrote down because of the fact she was in the Mae Young Classic. The other two I'm not sure, so I'm apologizing in advance for any name butchering. Meiko Satomura is rumored to be a head trainer. She is currently the Progress Women's Champion, so I could also see her being a mainstay, a main fixture, maybe the ace of the women's division in NXT Japan. She's rumored to be one of the head trainers. Daisuke Sekimoto is also rumored to be a head trainer. For those who are curious, he was in Battle of Los Angeles this year. He's a frequent wrestler for, I believe, Big Japan Pro Wrestling. Not 100% sure on that one. And also, Sari Fujinami. Or wait, Fujimura. Excuse me. My handwriting just sucks. Those three could be a big one. There's a fourth one I remember reading, but that was only in one article that I saw. So, don't know how that one really would fit in. But we'll see. We'll see with all this news and stuff. Like I said on the All Things Combat Twitter from the Rumor Mill with NXT Japan, a radio host there for Pacific Rim, I think it's called Pacific Rim Wrestling Radio, asked about NXT Japan, asked me again after October 18th. Well, it's after October 18th in Japan now, so we'll see. It still could work for all I know. And like I said, those would be good performance center coaches, head trainers, whatever you want to call them. They have that's a lot of wrestling knowledge there. That's a lot of history and lineage with companies. And those could be companies that the NXT Japan could work with. There are companies, like still All Japan Pro Wrestling, Big Japan Pro Wrestling, Ice Ribbon's a possibility, Sendai Girls Pro Wrestling is a possibility. There's still so many that they could work with, and I'm totally fine with that. What I want NXT Japan to be is not, we're gonna work with the biggest names in professional wrestling in Japan, and you're gonna see the same guys over and over. No, I want it to be, guys I've heard of, but I've never had the opportunity to see because I'm only one guy, and I don't have time to watch all of pro wrestling. I have, I keep saying, 7 jobs, 8 jobs, something like that, where I can't watch everything. So NXT Japan could be helpful in that aspect where we can see guys that we don't normally see. Like I think I said Jake Lee is kind of one I want to see, who's a wrestler for All Japan. There's a couple other ones that could work in there, which I would be very happy to see and enjoy. But still, it's something that will be interesting to see develop, especially if NXT Japan goes that route and works with some of the smaller name companies and they can make stars that way. There is also the free agents that are Japanese wrestlers. The reason I say that is because I want Sonata in NXT. If New Japan's not going to use him right, he should jump ship to me, personally. I don't enjoy seeing him just get wasted. He's one of my favorite personal pro wrestlers. Why is he just there in New Japan if he's not doing anything? Doesn't make sense to me. But that's a little rant for another day, for all I know. Maybe soon, who knows. And then everyone's saying it can't work. Everyone's saying New Japan or NXT Japan can't work. I'm going to say why it can. Japanese fans are a dedicated bunch. They're loyal to whatever brand soil that they love. And that's totally admirable. It's a lot better than a lot of us here in the US. Like for me, for example, I talk about NXT, WWE, AEW, sometimes Impact, throw a little Ring of Honor in there, maybe a little Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. You see what I'm saying. I talk about a lot of pro wrestling and we watch a lot of pro wrestling. Japanese fans get loyal to one group and they don't typically stray from it. What I'm saying is, this is what I want the pro wrestling world to be. We all work together. We all thrive. And all the companies kind of work around each other. And that's why NXT Japan can work. They can carve into a little niche, depending on what companies they end up working with. And they can get into the fan base that way. And also what they need to do is work with their rival promotions. I'm talking New Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, all of them. Figure out when their big days are. Like, Wrestle Kingdom's always on January 4th. Now it's in 2 days, so it's January 4th and 5th. There's a few other companies that have shows on important shows on specific days. There's the G1 Climax, World Tag League, Junior Tag League, Best of Super Juniors. And I know Noah has tournaments too. I don't remember what they're called at the top of my head. And it's annoying because I had to look them up a lot for Minoru Suzuki's How Did They Get Here. It's annoying. But they also have a couple important tournaments. So NXT Japan's job should be schedule around their big shows with their own big shows. So we can see TakeOver Osaka a couple weeks after Wrestle Kingdom, maybe a week or two after. And then that doesn't conflict with New Beginnings. I'm only using the New Japan shows as examples because of the fact that I know those names. They can schedule around Sakura Genesis. They can schedule something along those lines. What I'd also like to see WrestleMania weekend is an NXT Super Show. Instead of having the typical 5 matches, have a show early in the day. Say an NXT UK show early in the day. And then maybe have a little break in between. Maybe a 2 to 3, maybe even 4 hour break. Have a nice little meet and greet session where you can meet wrestlers and talk to them and photo ops and whatnot. And then come back for NXT. An NXT takeover. It would be an interesting concept, I think, at least. And NXT Japan can work in there somehow, some way too. Depends on when we get NXT Japan and when it actually gets started. NXT UK has gone on for a year. I can see that going for a lot longer. I can also see, NXT Japan being a long-term thing. It all depends on how nice WWE, NXT in particular, want to be to the other companies and the rival promotions. I don't think NXT's goal is to run any company out of business. What happened with WCPW or Defiant Wrestling is unfortunate, yes, and it's something that is a shame. But Defiant was also on a very weird platform. They were in a very weird situation where they were putting shows on YouTube, and then YouTube came down and said, like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. That's not allowed anymore according to our algorithm. That's too violent, essentially, is what they were saying. So they had to twist it and maneuver around, and the fan base kind of left, to be fair, with What Culture Pro Wrestling after it changed to Defiant, when Adam Pacitti, Jack the Jobber, or Jack King, Sam Driver, Ross Terrell, and, to be fair, Adam Blampied, when they all left What Culture, a lot of the fans left with them. I was one of them. I haven't really watched anything from What Culture outside of the odd gaming video here and there, and a lot of the stuff Simon does. For those who don't know, it's Simon Miller. So that's kind of the reason Defiant, I think, failed. The fans just lost interest. I don't think it was because NXT UK picked and pulled and stole all their talent. They were still having great matches. They still had David Starr. They still had Rampage Brown. They still had Millie McKenzie was there. They still had a bunch of young up-and-coming guys. I think BT Gunn was the guy that they lost, but he was somebody that could have been a big star for them if they had just done the Prestige right, essentially. And that's when the Prestige was done wrong. It's just like, to me, BT Gunn was always like the black sheep of that. And now you see Travis Banks and Ligero over in NXT UK. BT Gunn has shown up there once. Joe Coffey's in NXT UK. You have Joe Hendry over in Ring of Honor doing whatever the hell it is doing over there. It's a shame that Ring of Honor isn't on TV because I want to watch it. It's something that NXT Japan and NXT's goal is, like I said, is not to drive out companies. It's not the goal. The goal is just to put on the best pro wrestling possible. Triple H is not out here saying, yeah, let's run this company out of business. Let's destroy this company's fan base. No, he's saying we're just going to do our thing. We want to put on amazing pro wrestling for our fans. That's what we're going to do. And I completely enjoy that. You might have noticed also there was a name when I mentioned companies it can still work with for NXT Japan that I didn't mention. That's Stardom. The reason for that, yesterday it broke that, I think it was yesterday. It was either yesterday or really early on Thursday. Or Wednesday, excuse me. I don't know what day it is anymore. Where am I? NXT Japan's parent company, Bushiroad, I believe that's how you say it. It has Bushi, like the pro wrestler Bushi, and then it says Road, so I'm just assuming it's how you pronounce it. Again, apologies if I'm pronouncing things incorrectly. Bushiroad has bought Stardom. Stardom, for those that don't know, is an all-women's promotion, which is considered the best all-women's promotion in the world. And I would say that and Shimmer are 1 and 2. Shimmer is an American-based one in somewhere in Illinois. And it's got a lot of like the NXT wrestlers that we see now have been prominent names there. But Stardom being bought by Bushiroad, it has a couple of interesting things. That means now, essentially from what I can kind of glean from it, this could mean we could see Stardom matches on New Japan World. Which is really cool for me, really fine by me. We're not going to see the likes of, B. Priestley on there, no more Tony Storm. But, like Session Moth Martina, who signed with Ring of Honor, she can still do Stardom. There are still going to be names that people know that we can see on there. I believe Millie McKenzie's in there somewhere, somehow, some way, with Charlie Evans. We could see all of that and how that works. And that would be really cool. Because if you know me, I'm a proponent of this. I support women's wrestling wholeheartedly. It's something that I've enjoyed watching since coming back to WWE and pro wrestling in general. Women's wrestling has taken the next step, essentially, to me. They've become more prominent, more focus, and they're not just getting 3-minute matches. They're getting main events of shows. They're main eventing amazing, the biggest show of the world in pro wrestling, WrestleMania. They're main eventing these shows and putting on amazing matches. New Japan is realizing that and saying, well, New Japan and Bushiroad are realizing that and saying we should probably jump in on this. I'm not saying this is going to be a New Japan women's division, but it could be. This could be that step to that. And there's a reason I think this can work. For a long time, yes, it's tradition to have a promotion for the male wrestlers and a promotion for the female wrestlers. And I'm totally understanding of that. I totally get that. But a lot of us Westerners and a lot of people around the world outside of Japan are like, well, that's dumb. There's a whole thing about it on Reddit from, I think it's Inside the Ropes, maybe. Or not Inside the Ropes. It's from one of the subreddits about wrestling, where everyone's like, New Japan should have a pro wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling should have a women's division. And it's really split down the middle, 50-50 on if they should or shouldn't. I think this step shows that they could be working on it, because now they're both under the same family, they're both owned by the same people. We could see it happen at some point. It would be very interesting to see what the reaction would be to that. I'm kind of split on it personally. I would love to see it, but does it work? I don't know if it does, to be fair. We'll have to wait and see. I'm very curious about it. I want to see it succeed. I want to see this partnership become something great. Maybe we see a women's tournament. I know they have a tag team tournament going on now, I believe. I don't remember the name of it. I keep saying Sasha Moth Martina because she's the one. I know Zoe Lucas is over there too. And there's a whole bunch of talented wrestlers over there. I think a couple of the Japanese wrestlers are over there too. Mayu. Never say her name right. I think it's Mayu. It's Mayu Iwatani. I think she's over there still. For anyone who also doesn't know, Stardom is the promotion where the likes of Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, and Asuka were before jumping over to WWE. And it's important to see Japanese companies supporting each other, where you're getting to see the likes of Stardom wrestlers get this big of a break. I'm very happy to see it. I'm very curious to see what it means, though, because there's so many different directions this could go. We don't know what it is, but we'll see. We have, what is it, October 18th? We have a little over 2 months, a little over 3 months before Wrestle Kingdom. Right now, we know 2 matches on that show for sure. We could also see, for all we know, one of those days, we could see the first ever New Japan Pro Wrestling Women's Division match. It's just the wrestling world we're living at this point. And a lot of companies are seeing that. It's like we have to work together to make things work. And not make ends meet, but we have to work together so that everybody can succeed and we can become this big company. It'll be interesting to see how things develop and where things go. And it's a story I'll be tracking at least. I don't know how many people will be interested in it, but it's something I'll be interested in. And that being said, that is it for this week on the Armchair Armdrager podcast. I said I wanted to go short. This might be over an hour. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, like I say, you can follow me on Twitter at ChurroSolid. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat on Twitter, which is a pro wrestling. Start over. You can follow All Things Combat on Twitter, which is a website that covers pro wrestling, boxing, and MMA at Things Combat. I write over there. We have a merch store. You can buy a shirt. You can buy a hoodie. You can buy a hat. You can buy a phone case. You can buy a mouse pad. You can buy a bag. You can buy water bottles. You can buy a lot of stuff. That is over. I'll have that link in the description to that Spreadshirt website page, link, thing. Yeah. And also, I'm the sports editor over at the Cauldron at Cleveland State University, where I write about sports. And I wrote one arts and entertainment piece last week. I'll have some links to stuff in the description. Definitely the Twitters, maybe articles. Definitely the draft article I did for All Things Combat. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you like what you heard, give me a thumbs up. If you really like what you heard, you can hit subscribe. New episodes go up every Friday. I'll probably be back to recording on Thursday next week. And that week I have an announcement to go out for the following week. So next week there's an announcement in a week. So it's Halloween weekend that I have to talk about, essentially. Or Halloween week, for lack of a better term. But yeah, hit Hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment if you want. I'm always willing to talk about anything pro wrestling related, anything sports related, anything along those lines. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you next week with maybe news about NXT Japan, maybe WWE news, maybe we talk about how bad the Saudi Arabia deal is. Who knows? Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week.